Masechet Sotah, Daf Lamed Vav. We continue Agadot about the crossing of the Jordan in the time of Yehoshua. Bore kama nisim na'asu be'oto hayom avru Yisrael hayarden uba'u lahar Gerizim ulahar Ebal yater mishishim mil ve'en kol b'riya yechola la'amod bifnehem. Look how many miracles happened on that day. They crossed over the Jordan River that split, and they reached Har Gerizim and Har Ebal, which is more than 60 mil from the river. We saw that there were two opinions about this, but this is according to the opinion that it's near Shechem, which is far away, and they were able to travel there within that very day, and nobody was able to stand before them. None of the enemies, none of them attacked Israel while they were traveling all that way. And anyone who did try to come and attack Bnei Israel, they were immediately struck with diarrhea. As the pasuk says, I will send my terror before you, confound the people that you encounter. And when someone's very scared, they get stomach cramps, they get intestinal problems, and so they were not able to continue their attack. And this is interpreted into the Pesukim in Az Yashir, where it says that the enemies will fall in terror and dread while you pass over. So the first Aja Avod Mecha Hashem is referring to the entering into the land the first time, during the time of Yoshua, and Aja Avod Zukanita is talking about the second time. That means after the destruction of the first Bet HaMikdash, when they're going to return to Eretz Yisrael from Bavel. Also, they were able to pass through, and nobody attacked them. We can see from this parallelism that this Ad Yavor and the second Ad Yavor in the pasuk. I mean, the simple reading is that this is parallelism, like we always find in biblical poetry. But if in fact we say that's referring to the entering into Israel in the time of Yehoshua, and that's parallel to the entering into Israel in the time of in the time of Cyrus. In the beginning of the second Bet HaMikdash period, well then, if those are parallel, then actually, just like Israel was worthy that they had miracles happen to them in the time of Yehoshua, the Jews would have been worthy of having the same miracles happen to them, and the splitting of the Jordan and all that in the next generation. During the time of Koresh, but sin caused them not to be able to enter the land with miracles, and that's why they just entered in a natural way. ואחר כך הביאו את האבנים ובענו את המזבח וסדו בסיד וחתמו עליהם את כל דברי התורה ב70 לשון שנאמר באר היטב. And now after they came in, they took those stones that they got from the bottom of the river, and first they used them to build a mizbeach, and they put plaster on it, and they wrote on those stones all of the Torah, and they wrote it in 70 languages, as it says ba'er hetev, to elucidate clearly. It means has to be clear to any reader, no matter what language they speak. And so then on that Mizbeach, they have burnt offerings and peace offerings, and they ate, and they drank, and they celebrated. This is a Berit reconfirmation ceremony. And then they did the berachot and kelalot there on Har Gerizim and Har Eval, the whole ceremony. And then they took down the stones that they made into a mizbeach, and they brought them to Gilgal, where they slept. That's the malon. So the very same stones that they used for the mizbeach, then they took with them, and they built a monument there. Now it says b'malon. Does that mean that they took the stones with them every time they traveled? The continuation of this pasuk says the the malon in which you will sleep tonight, meaning only that. That's the last stop for the stones. And it says furthermore, later in that chapter, the ones that they took out of the Jordan, they set up in Gilgal, and that's it. They left it at their lodging place in Gilgal, so that it should be there forever after. Tana, Sir'ah lo abera imahem. There's a kind of hornet called Sir'ah, that did not cross over the Jordan with them. As Pasuk in Yoshua that says, there was a Sir'ah that helped Bnei Israel fight the nations on the outside the land, on the eastern side of the Jordan. When Moshe was fighting those enemies there, he had the benefit of this secret weapon, these flying drones, attack drones, called the Sir'ah. But they only helped out in the time of Moshe. They did not enter the land with Yoshua, so Yoshua did not have the benefit of this secret flying weapon. And we ask, hold on, is that baraita true? Because we have a pasuk in Shemot that says, I'm going to send in the hornet before you to drive out the Chivim, the Canaanim. So it sounds like they are going to help even with the 7 nations that are in Eretz Canaan. Not only Sichon and Og that are on the outside. Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish al Sefat Yarden, עמדה וזרקה בהן מרה וסימתה עיניכן מלמטה וסרסתן מלמטה. So Resh Lakish explains, in fact, both are true. They remained on the eastern bank of the Jordan River, and from there they were able to shoot venom into the land, so they didn't get everybody in the land. They only could shoot so far, but at least the enemies that lived on the western bank near the Jordan River, they were attacked. And there was a double attack, that this venom would blind their eyes and above and castrate them from below. שנאמר, ואנוכי השמדתי את המורים מפניהם, אשר כגובה הארזים גובהו וחסון הוא כאלונים והשמיד פריו ממעל ושרשיו מתחת. And all this is based on the pasuk in Amos. Says, I destroyed the Emori. Their height was like cedars and strong like oaks, but what does that matter to Hashem, who can defeat them and destroy their fruit from above, their roots from beneath? That refers to their eyes and their privates that were attacked by this hornet venom from afar. So according to that opinion, in fact, these hornets did not enter, and no hornets entered into Eretz Israel. However, Rapapa amar shetesed otavai chada de Moshe v'chada de Yoshua de Moshe lo avar de Yoshua avar. Rapapa said there were actually 2 sets of hornets. One of them from the time of Moshe, and those helped Moshe fight those enemies outside the land, and they did not enter. That's what the Baraita was talking about. But there were in fact other hornets in the time of Yehoshua, and they did in fact help Yehoshua, and that's how he can reconcile this Baraita with this pasuk by saying there were 2 separate sets of hornets, not that it was the same set that had to shoot their venom over the river. All right, now back to the Mishnah that said, Shisha Shebatim Alu Lerosh Har Gerizim. There were 6 tribes that were on Har Gerizim and 6 tribes on Har Aival. And we know this from the Pasuk that says, my Hachetzyo, the Pasuk says here, Chetzyo el mul har gerizim veha chetzyo el mul har aival. That half of the tribes of Israel were on har gerizim, and half were on har aival, or facing. Half of them facing har gerizim, half of them facing har aival. So the question is, here it says chetzyo for the first half, but the other one says ha chetzyo. Why not just say chetzyo again? What do you mean the half? Okay, now if you want to know which tribes stood on each, that we already know from Devarim 27. Here Moshe already says, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Yisachar, Yosef, Binyamin. And on the other hand, Yamdu ala kilala bahar aival, Reuben, Gad, Asher, Uzbulun, Dan, Naphtali. You can see clearly the reason for the breakdown. The ones that are on Had Aival for the kilala, those are the Bnei HaShefachot and Reuven and Gad, who, remember, they wanted to stay outside the land of Israel on the other side of the Jordan. So these are the low-class Shevatim, and on the other hand, you have here Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Yisrael, Yosef, Binyamin. These are the children of Leah and of Rachel. the imahot and not the shefachot, and those that did go into the land. So these are the high class shevatim. They're the ones that get the beracha. Okay, so you see that the breakdown is very purposeful. So now that we know what the breakdown was, but how come half of them are called the ones on Had Ival? Why are they called Ha Chetzio? Amar Rav Kahana kederech shechalukin kan kach chalukin be'avnei ephod. So Rav Kahana explains that the breakdown between 6 and 6 on the mountains is parallel to, is the same breakdown as that on the stones of the ephod. The Kohen Gadol, besides wearing the Chosh Mishpat that had all 12 tribes, he also had on his shoulders 2 stones that had 6 and 6 tribes. It looks something like this. Right, here's 6 tribes, and here's the other 6. This is a breakdown according to Rambam. And this would be on one shoulder, and the other would be on the other shoulder. And so according to Rav Kahana, the Ha Chetzio, the He HaYediah, is telling us that the breakdown on the mountain is the same as the breakdown that you know about already, of 6 and 6 on the shoulders of the Kohen Gadol's ephod. Okay, so that's what Rav Kahana said. Here's the problem. There are a number of opinions about how to break down the tribes on the 2 shoulders of the Kohen Gadol. The Torah does not say explicitly. And the problem is that the different opinions about how to break them down are not the same as the ones on the mountain, which is going to be a challenge to Rav Kahana. So here's a couple of the opinions. Metibeh, shetei avanim tovot hayu lo l'kohen gadol ad ketefav, achat mikan v'achat mikan, u'shmo shnemasar shevatim katuv aleihem, shisha al eben zo, v'shisha al eben zo, shenemar, shisha mishemotam al eben ha'echat. So far so good. There were 2 precious stones on the Kohen Gadol on the shoulders, one on one shoulder, one on the other shoulder, and the names of the 12 tribes were in on them, 6 on one and 6 on the other, and quotes the pasuk and Shemot. Now, Shiniya, it doesn't say the order yet. Here's the order. Shiniya ketoldotam ve'lo rishona ketoldotam. The second half had them in order of birth, but the first one was not in order of birth, because Yehuda came first. Otherwise, it was in order of birth. Except that Yehuda came first. So v'chameshim otiyot hayu, 25 al even zo, v'25 al even zo. And furthermore, there was 50 letters. If you count all the letters in all 12 tribes, it comes out to 50. And it was broken up evenly, such that there were 25 letters on one shoulder and 25 letters on the stone on the other shoulder. All right, if you work out the math and the numbers, you come out with the following. That the second stone would have Gad, Asher, Yisachar, Zebulun, Yosef, Binyamin, and the first stone would have Yehuda first. Those are in order, but Yehuda is first, and the second stone, and then Reuven, even though Reuven's older. But otherwise, it goes in order of their birth: Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Dan, and Naphtali. Good. So we have an order here, but this is not the same as the order that it says in Devarim 27. So this one is not going to work. Now we have another opinion. Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel Omer, lo kederech shechalukin b'chumash hapekudim chalukin b'abnei ephod, ela kederech shechalukin b'chumash sheni. He says, no, the tribes were not divided the way that you find the list in Sefer Bimidbar. Sefer Bimidbar is called Chumash HaPekudim, literally the book of numbers, the book of counting, because they're counted a lot of times. You see that the English words that we have for the names of the books, right? Exodus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, those actually come from the Septuagint, but these are not English or Greek in origin. These Septuagint, the Greek word, is actually just a translation of the older Hebrew name for the Chumashim. So back in the times of the Talmud, it was not called Sefer Bimidbar. The rabbis of the Talmud called it Chumash HaPekudim, and they called Devarim Mishneh Torah. Mishneh Torah is the origin of Deuteronomy, second law. Okay, so anyway, it's not split up according to the order of the tribes as they're listed in the first chapter of Sefer Bimidbar, but rather as they're listed in the beginning of Sefer Shemot, when it says these are the tribes that came down, these are the sons of Yaakov that came down, and that's the order. If you want to see a nice chart, here is a nice chart thanks to Art Scroll. So the Baraita we just saw, the first one, says that here Yehuda is first. Otherwise, it follows Reuben, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda. Reuben, Shimon, Levi, Dan, Naphtali. And the second stone are these, and this would be 25 letters, and these are 25 letters. We're going to see in a second that actually this one is only 24 letters. We're going to solve that problem soon. But here we have a second opinion that it's the order of based on Shemot, which would be Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Yisachar, Zebulun. And the other one is Binyamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Yosef. And what you see here is that this also is not the same as the order in Devarim 27. So this is a problem. And Kesad Bnei Leah Kesidran Bnei Rachel Echad Mikan Vechad Mikan Ubnei Shefachot Ba'imsa. Right, you see, according to Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel, it does follow more or less the order in Shemot, except that we follow Bnei Leah, go all the way down the line in order, but Bnei Rachel are put on the edges. As follows. Here you have the Bnei Leah all on one, and here you have Binyamin starts and Yosef ends the list, which is different from the way it is in Sefer Shemot, but otherwise it's the same. Okay, so here you have a first order, a second order of the stones here and the stones there, but neither of these are like the ones on Had Gerizim. Rav Kahana, on the other hand, said that it should match the ones on Had Gerizim, right? But nobody says that. Not Tanakama, not Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel. So now we are back to having a problem. So ve'ela ma'ani mekayem ketoldotam. So if they're not written according to the order of births, right? Because over here, see, it's not in order of birth, but rather in the order that is said in Shemot, except some are switched around. So according to this opinion here, what does ketoldotam mean? Which says regarding the stones, has to be written ketoldotam. Kishmotan shekara lehem avihen velo kishemot shekara lehen Moshe. Reuben velo Reubeni, Shimon velo Shimoni, Dan velo Hadani, Gad velo Hagadi, tiyubta Rav Kahana tiyubta. Ketoldotam means not in the order of their birth, but rather the name that their father called them, not the name that Moshe called them. Their father called them Reuven, Shimon, Dan. Whereas in other times in the Torah, when it wants to talk about the families and genealogies, it will say Reuveni, Shimoni. So Moshe refers to them as the tribe of the Reubenites. And so that's why you don't write Reuveni on the shoulder, but rather just Reuven on their shoulder. That's what Toldotam means. So that explains the opinion of Rabbi Chanina. Okay, now back to the question. This is a challenge to Rav Kahana, and it's a conclusive refutation. And so therefore, we're back to our original question. Our original question was, it says, Ha chetzio, the half, on one mountain, and right, half on one mountain, and the half Hachetzio on the other mountain. So Rav Kahana wanted to say that Hachetzio is referring to the well-known half, the one that's already on the shoulder of the Kohen Gadol. But we just proved that that's not true, because the breakdown of 6 and 6 in Devarim 27 does not match either opinion of the shoulders. Ela may v'hachetzio tana chetzio shel mul had gerizim merubeh mechetzio shel had aibal mipnei shel levi lemata. Rather, chetzio, the half that was on had gerizim, was more than the half that was on had aibal. So it says a yediyah to say the half, meaning a smaller half, is on had aibal, a more particular. Yediyah can be a limiting word. Why would that be so? Because it was actually, even though there's 12 tribes, which is 6 and 6, Levi was on the bottom between the two mountains. So you got to take out Levi. So there's only 11 tribes. That means there were 6 on Had Gerizim and only 5 on Had Aival. But now we ask, Adraba, if Levi is on the bottom, which one did Levi come from? Levi came from Had Gerizim, right? If we look back in the pasuk here, the Shimon Levi Yehuda, Levi is meant to be on Had Gerizim. So if you take him off that mountain and put him on the bottom, then actually it's going to be 5 on Had Gerizim. So how could it be that there's more people on Had Gerizim? Hachi kamad. Afa pisha Levi lemata b'nei Yosef imam shenema וידברו בני יוסף את יהושע לאמור מדוע נתת לי נחלה גורל אחד וחבל אחד ואני עם רב ויאמר עליהם יהושע אם עם רב אתה עלה לך היערה. Even though Levi was down on the bottom, nevertheless there were more people. Even though there's only 5 tribes, it was still a bigger population on Had Gerizim because you had Bnei Yosef there, and Bnei Yosef had a very large population, and we know that from the time that Bnei Yosef came to Yeshua and said, how come you're only giving us one portion, only a small inheritance? We have so many people. And Yeshua told them, if you're so many, go expand out to the forest, right? You can go expand your lot into that empty forest over there. And so we see that Yosef was a lot of people, and that's why it means that Had Gerizim was bigger, and Ha Chitzyo, the smaller mountain, there were less people on Had Eval. Hamar lehen, lechu v'chbiu asmechem b'ye'arim. Now we're going to explain these Pesukim here. What does it mean they said go into the forest? What Yoshua actually was saying is not expand into the forest, but rather go hide yourselves in the forest, shelot yishot b'achem ayin hara, so that evil eye will not have dominion over you. Right? You just came and said, oh, we're so many, you're kind of boasting. It's not nice to boast, and when people boast out loud, then that could bring bad luck. This is a classic example of Ayin Hara. אמרו לה, זרעי יוסף לה שותה בעיינה בישה, דכתיב בן פורת יוסף בן פורת עלי עין. And Yosef told Yoshua, don't worry about us, evil eye does not have dominion over Yosef because of the beracha that's given to them. Yosef is like a fruitful vine on a fountain. And if we reread this, not that they are on a fountain, but rather they rise above I. Well, what do you mean I? They rise above the evil eye, that you don't have to worry about Yosef. So he was saying, go and hide, hide your big population so that this doesn't, evil eye doesn't affect you. And said, we don't care about evil eye. Or we can learn the same lesson that Yosef is protected from evil eye from this pasuk that says that they should be grow and become a multitude within the land. Madagim shebayam ma'im machasim alehem ven ayin shot bahem af zarosha Yosef and ayin sholetet bahem. Why does it say v'yidgu? That comes from the word dag, that they should be as many as fish in the sea. Oh, why? Just like fish are in the sea and water covers them, so you can't see the fish, so too the descendants of Yosef, the eye will not have dominion over them. They will grow and be successful and not have to worry about worry about this problem. Now back to that 50 letters that you mentioned, that altogether is 50 letters, 25 on one and 25 on the other. It's not true. There's only 49. Go count them. Amar Yitzchak Yosef hosifu lo otahash nemad hayadut bihosef samo besato les Misraim. Oh, Yosef got an extra letter when he left Egypt, and so he had an extra hair, and that accounts for it. Matkif la Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak ketoldotam ba'inan. Rav Nachman says, no, you can't do that because you have to follow the way they were spelt at the time of their birth. It says the names on the 2 shoulders has to be ketoldotam, and you can't include the extra letter that they got later on. Ela kol Torah kula Binyamin ketiv hacha Binyamin shalem kedichtiv aviv kara lo Binyamin. Rather, the extra letter is found in the word Binyamin, where usually it's written haser, just bet nun yud mem nun, 5 letters, but here on the shoulder of the Kohen Gadol it was written maleh with an extra yod. And in fact, if you look back in Bereshit Lamed He, it says that his father called him Binyamin, and in the Masoretic text it's written maleh with a yod. So ketoldotam, it says, don't spell Binyamin the usual way. Go back to the way that it was spelled when he was born. Look on Binyamin's birth certificate. You'll see that it was written with a yod there. And now we have 50 letters. All right, fantastic. Amar Rav Hana bar Bizna Amar Rabbi Shimon Hasida. Yosef shekideshem shamayim baseter osifu alav ot achat mishemo shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now that we mentioned that Yosef got an extra letter, even though that didn't help us for the fit to find the extra letter, but we do want to know, why did he deserve to get that extra letter? Bihosef, because he did a Kiddush Hashem in hiding, so he got an extra letter from God's name, but it's hidden. Be Hosef, it's just stuck into the middle. It is a letter from God's name, but it's also put into the middle, so it's hiding. Yehuda shekidesh Shem Shamayim befar Hesyah nikra kulo shemo shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Whereas Yehuda, who sanctified Hashem's name in public, so he gets his entire name is Yehuda. All the letters of his name, not the Dalid, but all the other letters of his name, it's almost entirely Hashem's name. You have Yod and He and Vav. So because he made a Kiddush Hashem in public, therefore all of his name is God's name. Now let's go and see what are we talking about with this Kiddush Hashem. Yosef Maihi, when did Yosef make a Kiddush Hashem in private? Tichtiv vahi kehayom hazeh vayavo habayta lasot melachto. Bereshit says that one day Yosef went to the house to do his work. Now, what does it mean, lasot melachto? Why do you have to say that he went to do his work? Rabbi Yochanan says this is sinister. It means that Yosef and Potiphar's wife, they went to the house intending not work, but work in as a euphemism. They intended to sin. Yosef also, his intention was to sin. He saved himself later, but that was intention going in. That's what Rabbi Yochanan in Eretz Yisrael. You have a similar discussion in Bavel between Rav Ushmuel. One of them says he was going to do his work, to do the housework like he usually does. It means literally. And the other said, no, to do his needs, meaning to sin with Potiphar's wife, same as Rabbi Yochanan's interpretation. Now, ve'en ish me'anshe habayit, and nobody was home. Efshar bayit gadol kebeto shel oto rasha lo haya bo ish. Wait, Potiphar has a giant house. He has a mansion. There's always things going on. Could it be there's nobody home? Tana deber Ishmael oto hayom yom hagam haya valchu kulan debet avodah zara shelahem v'yamera lehen chola hi amera en li yom sheniskak li Yosef kayom hazeh. Rather, must be that day there was a holiday, it was a festival, it was a carnival out in the town, and everybody went to this Avodah Zarah festival, but Eshet Potiphar said, oh, I'm sick. She made believe she was sick because she had in mind, oh, this is my opportunity. I'm not going to have a day like this when I'll be home. Yosef obviously is not going to go do Avodah Zarah, and so I can be home together with him so we can sin. And now she grabbed him by his garment and said, sleep with me. Be'ota sha'a bata diyokno shel aviv nirata lo b'chalon. Amar lo Yosef atidin achecha sheyikatvu al avnei efod ve'ata benehem. Resoncha sheyimache shimcha mibenehem v'tikare ro'eh zonot. Tichtiv ro'eh zonot ya'abed hon. And so Yosef almost was going to sin, but at that very moment, the appearance of his father, Yaakov, appeared to him in the window. You can imagine this would be a great scene to make a movie out of, and said, Yosef, in the future, all of your brothers' names will be written on the shoulders of the ephod, and you'll be there also if you do the right thing. However, if you sin, then is that what you want? And then your name will be erased from among them, and instead you'll be called an associate of Zonot. Quoting a pasuk in Mishleh, he who keeps company with Zonot, he will lose his riches. What do you mean the riches? The riches of the honor of being on those precious stones forever, to be one of the tribes of Israel, right? So if you're going to go and live in Egypt and then assimilate and sin, so then you're going to lose your identity and lose your place among Bnei Israel. So miyad, as soon as Yosef saw that vision, vatesheb be'etan kashtom. So this from the berachot of Yaakov at the end of Bereshit, it says his bow stayed firm. What is that referring to? Amar Rabbi Yochanan mishum Rabbi Meir sheshaba kashto le'etano. His bow, meaning his private part, went back to the way it was before, and he was able to not sin. Vayafozu zero'ei yadav na'as yadav bakarka v'yasa shichvat zar'o miben sipornei yadav, and the arms of his hands were made supple. It means he dug his nails into the ground, so not to move and not to sin, and that energy and seed came out from his fingernails, and the point is that he was able to calm his desire, and he did not sin. Mideh Abir Yaakov, continuing those Pesukim of the Berachot from Yaakov, that he, by the hands of the mighty one of Yaakov, Migaram lo sheyechakek al avnei ephod, ela Abir Yaakov. What caused him that he could be on the stones and not sin? It was the might of Jacob, meaning the appearance of Yaakov in that window gave him strength to do the right thing. Misham ro'eh eben Yisrael, misham zachav v'nasa ro'eh, shenemar ro'eh Yisrael azina noheg kason Yosef, and because of that he was able to be a shepherd to the Jewish people, not a shepherd to Zonot as before, as he might have been, but rather a shepherd to Israel, as Tehillim says, shepherd of Israel who leads the flock of Yosef. So you see, Yosef is connected with ro'eh. Tanya, היה ראוי יוסף לשאת ממנו 12 שבטים כדי שיעשו מיעקב אביו, שנאמר אלה תולדות יעקב יוסף. Really, Yosef was worthy that he could have had 12 tribes come just out of him, similar, parallel to Yaakov. As the Pasuk says, these are the children of Yaakov, and right after that, Yosef. They're back to back to say Yosef could have been like Yaakov. But that seed that came forth from his fingernails, that kind of drained his strength. So even though he did the right thing, but just that the fact that he almost sinned, that already lowered his level. And so he was not able to have 12 tribes like Yaakov. ואף על פי כן יעשו מבנימין אחי וכולן נקראו עד שמו שנאמר ובני בנימין בלה ובכר ואשבל וגומר. And however, even though Yosef did not have 12 children, his brother Binyamin did have 12 children, as the Pasuk says near the end of Bereshit, when it lists all the 70 people that went down to Mitzrayim. And their names are actually all references to Yosef. Let's see each one. Bela shenibla ben haumot. Bela means to be swallowed up, because Yosef was swallowed among the nations. He went and lived in Egypt among the other nations. Vabecher bechol imo haya. Becher means he was the firstborn of Rachel. Vashbel sheba'o el. Shbel means he was sent into captivity. Shevi and El. So he went into captivity, meaning he went down to Egypt as a captive. Gera shegar be'achsaniyut, that he lived in a foreign land. He was hosted in a foreign land. Naaman shenaim beyoter. Naaman, he was very beautiful and pleasing. Yosef. Achi varosh, achihu veroshihu. Binyamin, that's his kid, said, he is my brother and he is older than me. Mupim bechupim hu lo ra'a bechupati vani lo ra'iti bechupato. They each got married in different lands. So Binyamin says, he didn't see my wedding and I didn't get to see his wedding. That certainly explains chuppah. Mupim is not clear how they got them from the mupim to the chupim. But somehow it's a play on the double language here, and both referring to chuppah, that they had no chuppah. They didn't see each other's chuppah. Va'ard sheyarad leben hamot ha'olam. Ard, from going down. Yosef went down and lived with the other nations of the world, made yirida. Yikadam revar shepanav domin levered. Or Ard is like vered, like a rose. Yosef's face was so beautiful, like a rose. אמר רבי חייא בר אבא אמר רבי יוחנן בשעה שמע לו פרעה ליוסף ובלעדיך לא ירים איש את ידו אמרו תגניני פרעה הבט שלקחו רבו ב20 כסף תמשילו עלינו אמר להם גינוני מלכות אני רואה בו. Yochanan teaches that when Paro told Yosef that no man is going to lift up his hand in all of Egypt except for you. You are second in command to me. You're in charge of everything. So the astrologers of Paro said, this guy, he was a slave. He was bought for 20 coins. He is going to be on top of everybody. This cheap slave. And Paro says, I can tell that he has royal character in him. Even though he was sold as a slave, he's not really a slave. He comes from a royal family. So the astrologer said, if he's really such an important person, if he's royalty, he should know 70 languages. That's a character of royalty. You have to be able to govern a big empire. You have to know all the languages. Does he know all the languages? So right then, Gabriel came and taught him. We made a quick reference to this earlier. Gabriel taught him all 70 languages. Lahava Gamad, Hosif lo ot achat mishemo shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu velamad, shnemar, Edut bi Yosef samo beseto ales Misraim, sevat lo yadati eshma. So yet there's a different explanation of how he got his extra letter, that Gabriel was teaching him all 70 languages, but he couldn't get it. Yosef had a hard time. He had all the vocabulary index cards, flashcards, but he wasn't getting it, and so Gabriel had to help him out and added a letter to his name, a little divine assistance there, and that explains the pasuk that Edut bi Yosef, right? When he got his extra letter here, when he left Egypt, and he didn't know the language. So you see, not knowing the language is connected with bi Yosef. So that's where the Midrash gets this idea from. The very next day, he got a language test, and every language that Paro spoke, Yosef was able to converse with him in that language. But then Yosef one-upped Paro, and Yosef started speaking in Hebrew, and Paro didn't understand what he was saying. Amar le Agmeri, Paro said, teach me Hebrew. Agmere v'lagamar, but Paro, he could not figure it out. He was not able to learn it. Right, something about the holiness of the language and the degradation of Paro didn't work together. He couldn't absorb the language. Amar le ishtabatli de la maglet. So Paro said, swear to me that you won't tell anyone I don't know this language. Right, this would be very embarrassing to him that there's a language in the world that he doesn't know. Ishtabalo, Yosef says, fine, I'll swear it to you. Ki amar le abi hishbiani lemor. Amar le zil ashte itashel ashibuatach. And this came in handy later on. After Yaakov died, Yosef said to Paro, my father made me swear, saying that I would bury him in Israel. So I need to get back. I have an oath that I have to do. So then Paro said, okay, so what, you have an oath? Why don't you just go and dissolve your oath? And I don't want you to go to Eretz Yisrael. I want you to stay here in Egypt. So then Yosef said, Amar le, v'ishteli nami didach. Okay, fine. I'll dissolve my oath to bury my father in Israel, and at the same time, I'll dissolve the oath that I made to you, that to not reveal to anyone that you don't know a language. So this Yosef threatened Paro. And the threat worked, even though Paro really did not want Yosef to go. But now that he knew, if I don't let him go, he's going to reveal that I don't know a language, and I'll be shamed. So he says, okay, fine. You know what? Go up and bury your father according to your swear, and that way you keep my swear as well. Fantastic story. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen ve'amen.